What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the reveal of the number 2 team in my 2019 NFL Power Rankings with a deep dive into the New England Patriots. And this deep dive is going to be a little different than my other deep dives because there's really no questions to really have about this Patriots team. They're going to do the exact same thing they've done for the last 4 years. We've seen this same exact cycle. They go out, have an amazing season, they lose some big name players in free agency who want big deals. They'll probably come out, be slow to start the season. People start writing narratives about Tom Brady's done. Then they'll rip off like 9 out of 10 wins and go on and be playing in the AFC Championship because their schedule's a joke, their division's a joke, and Bill Belichick does this every single season. That doesn't mean we don't have anything to talk about for this team. Yet again, they had a pretty wild offseason, a lot of moves and stuff. A lot of roster turnover. It's just kind of what this team does that makes them so unique. So we're going to talk about who this year's kind of sleeper Bill Belichick moves might be, who's going to come in, make that big play in the playoffs that's going to get this team over the edge yet again. So if you enjoy, if you learn something, please do hit that like button. It's the easiest way to support the channel and share the video. Also make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any uploads. If you're looking for another way to support the channel, if you're shopping for tickets, do it on SeatGeek. That's where I buy my tickets. You get the best prices there. Use promo code ThatFranchiseGuy. You'll save $20 and support the channel in the process, so go check that out. If you're new to the series, what we do, we go through the roster, we rank each position, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you'll be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So while it is a video game, these are my own ratings, and it's a nice graphic to use to show how I perceive each player. After that, we'll go through the schedule, talk about this team's over-under, playoff odds, division odds, all that stuff, and really my win total expectations for this season at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around for that. So let's get into it. Like we said, some moving pieces on this roster we need to talk about, but the mainstay here, Tom Brady. And, you know, I think it's pretty clear that Tom Brady is showing his age just a little bit. Pretty much any analytical, statistical category you look at, and just on the field. Like, just look at him in the Super Bowl. He was miserable. But that's not to say that he can't play at an elite level. So we do still rank him tied for the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. I do expect some of these trends that I'm showing here to continue, and for him to show his age just ever so slightly. But it's the same exact thing we said about Drew Brees. When you are Drew Brees or Tom Brady, and you more so than almost any quarterback in the history of the NFL, in Tom Brady's case, almost certainly more than any quarterback in the NFL history, outside of arguably Peyton Manning, when you step up to the line of scrimmage, you know not just what the defense is doing, where the football needs to go, but then once the football snapped, these guys have such good awareness to see throwing lanes open before most quarterbacks ever would even consider it to be an open pass. So he can still play like an elite quarterback in other ways. You don't need an elite arm or elite mobility to be an elite quarterback. That said, you will see at times him not have much of a counterpunch. That's where the mobility and the elite arm to really open up the field and create plays that aren't there do come in handy. But really no doubt in my mind that Tom Brady will continue to be at worst a top 10 quarterback and be everything that this Patriots team needs to compete for and potentially win yet another Super Bowl. But you will always have that little kind of devil on your shoulder with that age of, he's like 42 years old now. So yes, he can continue to play at an elite level, but at some point, when does he hit that, physical threshold that is going to prohibit him from doing that? I would not project it to be this season, but there is, at his age, always going to be the scare that is going to happen, just like we said about Drew Brees. Now, behind Brady, you do have Brian Hoyer. We saw this team win 11 games with Matt Castle once. I'm not going to say that this team with this system, with this coaching staff and this defense cannot, continue to really succeed, especially with the schedule that this team has, hinting at the future of this video. There's really no reason to believe that this team can't continue to compete with Brian Hoyer. Then you have Jarrett Stidham as the developmental backup pick here, a 4th round pick. He drew to me some Tony Romo comparisons. Ironically, at times I've compared Jimmy Garoppolo to Tony Romo as well. He has enough mobility to sense pressure and extend plays with his feet. He's got a good arm. wasn't incredibly accurate in college, but is a guy that I think does have a chance to be the long-term replacement here in a couple years if he gets, the development he needs. It's definitely not likely, but I think you do give this Patriots team the benefit of the doubt after what we saw them do with a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, and hell, even Tom Brady if you go back to the early 2000s. So tied for 5th at quarterback, definitely a strength of this team. And then you go to the running back position. It's a really interesting group of running backs. They come in tied for 11th. That's mostly because of depth. Now, I was never the biggest Sony Michel fan. I had a 3rd round grade on him. I was pretty surprised to see the Patriots take him in the 1st. Usually a team that is not just very cognizant of the fact that you can have a rotation at running back, but also just cognizant of positional value as a whole. Drafting a running back in the 1st round very rarely returns dividends for teams. But when you're the Patriots, you can literally do whatever the you want. If you see a player you like, it doesn't matter if it's a 1st round pick or a 6th round pick, you can take him and turn him into a stud. Now, a big reason I didn't love Sony Michel was that he had a lot of injury concerns coming out, and those have, to this point, continued to plague him just to a little degree as a running back in the NFL, and he did start on the PUP list but has very recently come off of it. So he is kind of primed and ready to go. I do think that Bill Belichick's going to be smart with Sony Michel and recognize that, okay, this guy, if we give him 250 carries, the likelihood of him being hurt for the playoffs, which Belichick has shown year after year that he doesn't really care about the regular season. His division is a wash every year. Even if they win 10 games, they'll still manage to get a home playoff game, if not a 1st round bye with an 11-game season. So Bill Belichick is already thinking about January, not September, and that's why this team does often start slow. So I expect that we do see a good bit of Damian Harris. Now, I had a very comparable round grade to Damian Harris. A different player than Sony Michel, but not entirely. Is a very good receiver out of the backfield, a smart player, can run between the tackles. I really do think that we're going to see a lot of Damian Harris in the regular season. And then just like last year, I think Sony Michel late in the season into the playoffs could really take over. And we did see Sony Michel play at a very high level in the playoffs last season. He was one of the best, probably 10 players in the playoffs, period, last season. So while you have that high upside with Sony Michel, I really don't think that Bill Belichick is going to care about giving Michel 250 carries and really lean on him for this offense that has become more run-heavy in recent memory. So I like those 2 players. And then you have James White, who is one of the 5 best receiving backs in the NFL, is a huge cog to this offense. Make no mistake about it, this is a quick-hitting passing game. So to have that guy that is just an incredibly solid pair of hands, is a great route runner, and can be in the right place at the right time and be on the exact same page with Tom Brady in the receiving game, it means a lot to this team. And then you also have Rex Burkhead. He's kind of a poor man's James White in a way. So you've got a ton of depth at running back. This team's going to continue to do what they've done really for the last 10 years, and just rotate these guys around. For fantasy football, it's probably going to be a headache, but in terms of real football, I do expect a lot of production between really those top 3 guys. And that's really why they come in tied for 11th, even if they don't have necessarily a top 10 running back. Then at wide receiver, you have very much a motley crew here. So they do come in tied for 21st, which is not necessarily a strength of this team. Now, it all starts with Julian Edelman leading the charge in this offense that really focuses on quick option routes, reading the defense, getting a quick mismatch problem, and going for 4 or 5 yards every play. Not necessarily looking to set up big chunk play action plays like some of these other offenses like the Rams or whatever. Like, the Patriots are very content to just take 4 or 5 yards of play. They really put a lot of emphasis on run after the catch as well, as that is how you can turn this plays in this offense into 10, 15-yard chunk plays, and Julian Edelman epitomizes all of that. Now, he's currently on the non-football injury list. I'm sure he will be good to go for the season, but he has had some health questions over the last 5 years or so. He has got to stay healthy. Behind him, you've you don't necessarily have question marks. Like, I feel pretty good about this team's talent at wide receiver and being able to get someone here to step up. But the question of who that's going to be is definitely there. So you have N'Keal Harry, who was a first-round pick this year. Now, I had a second to a third-round grade on him because he doesn't have that vertical ability, in my opinion. He is a slower wide receiver. But like we said, this offense is not looking for, like, vertical wide receivers necessarily. They want guys who can get open quick and early, be very physical and good run after the catch guys, and just be smart players that can be on the same page with Tom Brady. And if you told me that the Patriots were going to draft a wide receiver in the first round, N'Keal Harry makes a ton of sense because he's probably the smartest receiver in this class, is a fantastic run blocker, which this team wants to put a lot of emphasis on. He's going to be a willing blocker. And, his foot quickness and release at the line of scrimmage is fantastic. He's kind of similar to Davante Adams in that way that, he doesn't have the elite speed, but you try to press this guy and he's going to make you pay. He's also fantastic after the catch because of that foot quickness and just his strength to run you over. So he's going to be a great fit here. Now, any rookie wide receiver is going to come in with a question mark when you're talking about him as your number one outside wide receiver because Julian Edelman is a slot guy. So I do expect him to have a good rookie season. But because of the way that this team really moves the ball around and how much I think they are going to focus on the run game here, I don't know if he's going to be like a rookie of the year candidate or truly break out as a rookie, though he could be a very positive impact for this team. And then behind him, you have Philip Dorsett. He'll show up every few weeks and he'll show that physical talent that he has. One of the faster wide receivers in the NFL and showed some really nice things last year. You could do a lot worse than him as like your third wide receiver. And then you do have some wild cards here. Demaryius Thomas. I thought this was a great pickup by the Patriots. This is what this team does, is they take kind of rejected high potential players, and if they don't work out, then it's not like they invested a whole lot to get them anyway, and they'll just cut them. But Demaryius Thomas, we know, is one of the best run after the catch wide receivers in the NFL. He was a significant reason that Peyton Manning, at the end of his career, was able to still have the stats he had because they ran so many screens to Demaryius Thomas. Now, he's currently on the PUP list. He's coming off a significant injury. And it's really hard to sit here and assume that he's going to be an impact. But if they get him in here next to N'Keal Harry on the outside and with Julian Edelman in the slot, then you've got a lot of upside here at the wide receiver position. But it's just a massive question mark. Of course, Josh Gordon here. I'm not going to spend any time on this video talking about Josh Gordon. I'm just done with him. If he plays, good for him, I guess. Braxton Berrios, I just drafted him in a Dynasty Fantasy Football redraft. He, to me, seems like the heir apparent to the Julian Edelman role. I believe was a season-ending injury last season, so look for him to, maybe in the future be a big impact in this offense, assuming everything stays the same and Tom Brady stays here for another 2 or 3 years. I do think Berrios could be the Julian Edelman to Julian Edelman's Wes Welker. Did I say that right? Behind them, you have Jacoby Myers, good slot wide receiver there for NC State. I did like him. I had a draftable grade on him. He could make this team. You have Dontrell Inman, who played pretty well for the Colts last year. To me, he is just depth as an outside wide receiver, as a lot of these guys are more slot guys. And then they also have converted Danny Etling, a 7th-round quarterback last year, to wide receiver. I have no opinions on that. We'll see how that goes. I actually didn't think he was athletic enough to even consider that. Apparently, he's a little more athletic than we thought. And then you also have Matthew Slater here. He's for special teams. Also, they pick up Maurice Harris, who had his time in the sun for the Redskins. So a bunch of moving pieces there. They'll be able to figure it out. You also got to talk about the tight ends. They pick up Benjamin Watson, who kind of retired, but then with the suspension, I guess he wanted to come back and prove and end his career on the right note. So he'll be back here. This team clearly has put a lot of emphasis on the tight end position, and losing Gronk here, I think in a way kind of blindsided this team. Not that they weren't expecting him to be an early retirement, but I don't know if they expected it to be this year, and that is evidence in the depth chart and the moves that this team has made in the offseason. Now, I totally respect what they're doing here. One thing that's great about the Patriots, and they do this more than anyone, is Bill Belichick is so good at determining, probably with Tom Brady's feedback, if a guy can play. So, like, they originally signed Austin Severian-Jenkins, another kind of rejected high upside player. They had him for a few weeks and determined he couldn't play. Get out of here. You're cut. They go and trade for Michael Roberts, a fourth-round pick from the Lions in 2017. They give up very minimal to get him, or he might have even been a waiver pickup. I honestly don't know. But they very quickly cut him once they got him in the building. Like, they'll take shots at these higher upside guys, but they're very quick to move on as well. And now they're doing the same thing here with Lance Kendricks, with a guy like Steven Anderson. And when they do that, they at some point will find someone that fits the skill sets that they need. So whether it's Benjamin Watson coming out of retirement, or Lance Kendricks, or Steven Anderson, or even Ryan Izzo, who stayed here, a 7th-round pick in 2018, someone is going to have to emerge as the tight end here, or Matt LaCosse is another name we haven't mentioned yet. Who it's going to be is to be determined. But a couple things are very clear. You need to be able to block if you're going to play tight end for the New England Patriots, and you're also going to play a role in this offense. So whoever does emerge here is going to have some relevance. The guys that I would pick to be the starter here, man, I'm going to go 30% Ben Watson, 25% Matt LaCosse, Ryan Izzo 5%, Steven Anderson 10%, whatever's left, I'll give to Lance Kendricks. Like, it really is hard to determine. But because it's Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, they will get starting play from this position at whatever it takes. It's just impossible to say who it's going to be. So the receiver position comes in tied for 21st. It's not the best group of weapons that Tom Brady's ever had, but it's certainly not the worst, especially when you consider this offensive line as a weapon. I have this offensive line tied for first in the NFL. You've got to give Bill Belichick credit for putting one of the most dominant offensive lines around Tom Brady at his age. It has not just helped buy him some of the most time to throw in the pocket than anyone in the league, but has also really helped this team become a more run-heavy system here that does not have to put as much pressure on Tom Brady at his age. And you also got to credit them for how they've done it. Like, the Trent Brown trade last year was one of the best moves in the NFL, to go and get one of the best tackles in football for a 3rd-round pick from a team that just was going to bench him after drafting a guy in the 1st round. That's the kind of move that Bill Belichick brings to the table year after year. That was a season-changing move because they also took Isaiah Wynn, who's going to be this team's starting left tackle, but he tore his ACL. And you can't, words can't describe how big of a deal it was for this team to have a top, 20 tackle, if not better, be able to step in there and play in the event of injury. Most teams will have a tackle go down on an ACL tear and their season will crumble. Bill Belichick's not going to let that happen because he understands the importance of depth and how to capitalize on value. So anyway, back to this offensive line. You've got Isaiah Wynn at left tackle, undersized, only 6'3", but was fantastic in college, and seems like he's going to have a good, rookie season, if you will, and should be just fine at left tackle, if not more than fine. Then you have Marcus Cannon, established veteran there at right tackle, is not getting any younger. You would put a small question mark next to him. That's around the age when these guys do kind of fall off a cliff in the NFL, but it's not something you necessarily project. Did still play at a very high level last season. And even if he is your worst lineman here, you've got so much talent around him, they should be able to supplement it. So you have David Andrews, one of the probably 5 best centers in the NFL. Your guard combination, probably the best in the NFL, unless I'm forgetting someone. You have Shaq Mason, arguably the best guard in the NFL at right guard. Just a freak mauler, probably the best lineman in space, downfield blocking in the NFL next to like Jason Kelsey, I would say. And then Joe Thuney at left guard, one of the more underrated players on this team as just an absolute rock. All these guys can run block better than most linemen in the NFL, and they can absolutely buy time for Tom Brady. You also have depth here. You have Ted Karras, can really play center or guard. And then you have Yadni Kajust, currently on the non-football injury list, but was a guy that had really good college tape, was at a time considered a first-round pick, and was an excellent find in the third round. And then they also took Hjalti Froholt out of Arkansas, a fourth-round pick, someone that Belichick clearly likes, so keep an eye on him in the event of injury as a guy that could step in and this team really lean on. So you got an excellent starting five, tied for the first in the NFL, and some depth to complement that as well for the second year in a row. So the offense as a whole coming in third. Ironically, this is probably the best rushing offense in the NFL, even though they don't have a Zeke Elliott or Todd Gurley or any of that. But with this offensive line and the threat of Tom Brady as a thrower of the football, this team really is a terrifying rushing offense. Just as we saw in the playoffs last year, they just bulldozed the LA Chargers. And then the passing game, of course, is going to be incredibly efficient and frustrating to defend as well. So just like we said about the Saints, I think this Patriots team is a slightly better version of the Saints offense, but it is close. You know, it's not a team that's going to come out and get 30-plus yard chunk plays all the time. They're very content to hit the quick passes, create quick mismatch problems, and just nickel and dime you to death. And that's perfectly fine. That combined with the running game is a great complement to this defense as we transition, because it keeps them off the field, allows them to not just stay fresh and keep their stamina up, but also limits the amount of reps that they have to take and reduces the risk of injury for the playoffs. So I have it as the third best defense in the NFL. Now, this defense in the Tom Brady era has only been outside of the top 10 in terms of scoring defense 3 times in 18 years. It's really remarkable what Bill Belichick does here. Most of these guys are not superstar players. A lot of them are rejects, street free agents, low-end trades, and the system itself is incredibly unique. It's not like a lot of systems that put a lot of emphasis on getting after the quarterback and creating turnovers. So they let a guy like Trey Flowers go, gets paid $20 million, but then they use that money to bring in other pieces here that are going to be much more beneficial to what Bill Belichick wants to do here. So let's go through that here. Run defense. The Patriots have been one of the most head-scratching outliers to the whole conversation that's been such a big deal in this run defense doesn't matter conversation, because the Patriots actually put a lot of emphasis in gap control and stopping the run. And almost all of their defensive linemen, including their edge rushers, tend to be very big guys that are going to play discipline, stay in their lane, and keep everything in front of them. And that's really what this team does, is keeps everything in front of them. Everyone has a role to play. He's never going to ask any one player to be a superstar and save the day for this defense. And that's why you consistently see this team in the top 10 in terms of defense, because they very rarely allow big plays. So on the interior, you got Lawrence Guy, who emerged as one of the best run defenders in the NFL last year. And then they're able to maintain Danny Shelton here for basically nothing, adding to the list of very cheap nose tackles who are excellent run defenders. They pick up Mike Pennell, who can definitely play run defense. Adam Butler still developing here. They pick up David Perry, a good nose tackle. And then Byron Cowart, a 5th-round pick, was a 5-star prospect that had off-field issues in college. But he's a guy that if Bill Belichick can get his head right on his shoulders, could be a high upside interior guy for this defense. And then you have to mention the edge players here in terms of run defense. Michael Bennett will play on the edge on 1st and 2nd down, one of the better edge run defenders. You've got Dietrich Wise. He is going to be the guy you look for to be that Belichickian style defensive end, the Trey Flowers, 6'3", 6'4", north of 270 pounds, in that ballpark, guys that can just really, like we talked about, hold their guy and stay in their lane, if you will. Now look at those two guys as fantastic run defenders on the edge. So this does rank as the 2nd best run defense in the NFL. Now let's talk about the pass rush here. Now it's going to come in tied for 22nd, and for most teams, and this is almost a hole in the formula here, for most teams you would look at the tied for 22nd pass rush and say, oh, that's going to be a liability. They're not going to be able to get after the quarterback. This coverage unit could get exposed. We've said that about many teams here. But for whatever reason it is, and it's very difficult to pinpoint, but just the coaching here, the scheme, they don't put a lot of emphasis in this pass rush. And that's why losing a guy like Trey Flowers isn't going to be the end of the world. Now, we keep saying, okay, they've had a top 10 defense. They keep everything in front of them. They go with this bend, don't break approach. Last year, I would argue they got closer to being a borderline elite defense. I wouldn't say Tom Brady's always had that. And that was because of what Trey Flowers brought as a pass rush that took everything to the next level. But just the consistency here, they don't really put a ton of emphasis on this pass rush here. But Michael Bennett is an X factor here because per snap, Michael Bennett was a better pass rusher than Trey Flowers last year. Now he's getting older. You don't know if that rate's going to repeat. He's got injury concerns. Obviously, you don't even project him to be a better player than Trey Flowers, but to get him basically for free here to be that replacement, I think you're getting 90 to 95% of what you had in Trey Flowers. And when we credit Bill Belichick with those one or two moves every offseason that really set this team over to get to that Super Bowl, Michael Bennett and letting Trey Flowers go, like that is the kind of thing we're talking about here. That is just what BB does. So if this team is going to be elite again this year, I do think it's because Michael Bennett stays healthy and offers that high pressure rate. Granted, Bennett more of an interior pass rusher, whereas Trey Flowers played a little more on the edge, so it is a little different. I don't think you're going to get all the way back to what you had in Trey Flowers. Now, there are other players that are wild cards here, really three of them. So Dietrich Wise, set to be the starter on the edge, very disciplined run defender, a fourth-round pick in 2017. His career path could very much replicate Trey Flowers, and I think letting him go, they feel very comfortable in what they were able to do with Trey Flowers and Dietrich Wise recreating that role. It's hard to say if he can do it to that level, but the upside, I would say, is there. And then you also have Chase Winovich, a rookie third-round pick. He, to me, more of a speed rusher. He could even play some, edge outside linebacker in like a 4-3 under type of look. He is going to add a certain speed rush element and a pass rusher off the edge to try and recreate some of those pressures that they had from Trey Flowers. And then Derek Rivers, a third-round pick in 2017, wasn't really able to get on the field in his second season after being a bit of a sleeper pick in 2017, but did tear his ACL. So can he get healthy and be an impact on this defense? They also have John Simon, a veteran presence there. The depth here on the edge is really special. And they're going to have a talented group on the edge, even if it's never going to be an elite pass rush. So then you look at the linebackers here. You've got Donta Hightower here. Sometimes he's overrated, sometimes he's underrated. It kind of is just the role he plays. He's an extremely big off-ball linebacker. I think he's over 260 pounds. So at times he can be a borderline liability in coverage depending on what matchup, the opposing offenses create. So that at times is going to expose him. But that size also allows for a lot of flexibility. And for the most part, Bill Belichick does a good job of making sure he doesn't end up in those, costly matchups. But it is inevitable at times. But they'll line him up on the edge. You could have also talked about Donta Hightower when we were talking about the pass rush as a guy that could recontribute in that department with Trey Flowers leaving. But as a run defender, he is fantastic. His ability as just a traditional stack, shed, tackle, middle linebacker, base defense up there thumping, like he's great at all that. He's the leader of this defense and allows a ton of flexibility and discipline here. And then Kyle Van Noy has a lot of flexibility as well. And again, another guy who didn't succeed in Detroit because he's got physical limitations. If he's used as a traditional cover off-ball linebacker, he's not always going to succeed. But Belichick kind of knows what he is. He's going to play a lot on the edge as that outside linebacker in a limited responsibility, but within that hard flat zone or the curl flat zone, like he is going to be able to play very disciplined in that spot, and that's why he's stuck here. Is he's an incredibly smart player and a technically sound player. So those are the first two names you mentioned. But another guy in that conversation with the Belichickian pickup of the year with Michael Bennett is Jamie Collins. He gets cut from the Cleveland Browns after he was never as good as he was here in New England. But in his prime, 3 or 4 years ago here in New England, he was one of the best linebackers in the NFL, period. Now, what we've seen here with Kyle Van Noy is a lot of that was just the scheme and the role that guy was playing. So he's going to come in here and compete for that role with Kyle Van Noy. It's going to be tough for him to win that because Van Noy has played very well here, but he just has such a higher physical ceiling and is going to offer a little more scheme flexibility. You could ask him to do other things. He's also better as a pass rusher than Kyle Van Noy. So he is going to be another X factor here, and I would be excited if I was a Patriots fan about if and when he's going to get on the field. If at the very worst he offers remarkable depth here, he could play either Kyle Van Noy or Dont'a Hightower's position. And he could even just convert to an edge rusher and be a speed rusher here. Like, he's just a very flexible athlete that Bill Belichick has proved that he can get the most out of. So a fantastic pickup there. He's going to increase the ceiling for this offense. And then on the middle linebacker position, it's Jawan Bentley, who was a stunningly good 5th-round pick last year, was considered an oversized linebacker coming out. I had no idea who this guy was when they took him. I was like, well, there's the next 10-year all-pro linebacker for the New England Patriots, because he really was just out of nowhere. And sure enough, he comes in and was really dominant as a rookie, really surprised with his ability in coverage and just being a smart player, keeping everything in front of him, being a sure tackler. Not a great athlete, but I expect him to play a role here and maybe even get better in his second season. And then Elandon Roberts is just kind of the Preston Brown, Blake Martinez guy. Good tackler, not a ton of instincts, pretty poor in coverage, that kind of player. You got Christian Sam, a 6th-round pick last year. Brandon King, kind of that slot linebacker, box safety type. They got a lot of depth here at linebacker, and they're going to come in 9th, so inside the top 10 at the linebacker position. And then the secondary here, and this to me is at the top of the list of really remarkable jobs by Bill Belichick building this roster. It all started when they signed Stephon Gilmore. This team doesn't participate in high-level free agency very often, but when they do get involved, they hit. It was Darrelle Revis. Now it was Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore was a top 20 corner when they signed him, but he is now a top 5 corner and arguably the closest thing to a lockdown corner in the NFL. Did struggle a little early here in his New England days. I wouldn't say in 2018, but maybe in 2017 as a zone defender, understanding the scheme, playing like a smart player. He's grown up. He's great in that department, but his man-to-man ability, no one ever doubted that. And then Jason McCourty. Like, the Cleveland Browns are just feeding this team with guys like Danny Shelton, Jamie Collins, and Jason McCourty, who was one of the 20 best corners in the NFL last year. And they're able to get him back on the cheap again. Like, did no one in the NFL want to at least try to take this guy away from the Patriots? Like, there's got to be added value in just, running him up in terms of his contract. They already got him for free last year, and they're going to be paying him $4 million this year. Yeah, he's a year older, but should still, at worst, be a high-level number 2 corner. So their corners on the outside are perfectly elite, frankly. And then they have J.C. Jackson, to me set to be the nickel corner, was a great undrafted fit there, really emerged as a top nickel corner prospect. But if he did take a step back, you've got Duke Dawson, a 2nd-round pick last year that I loved as a nickel corner coming out of Florida. So you've got excellent competition in the nickel. They draft Jawan Williams in the 2nd round. I think they see him as a project. Not that he couldn't play right away, but he's just not going to have to. He could either be Jason McCourty's replacement as a lengthy press corner opposite of Stephon Gilmore to give this team a unique combination of a big physical guy. Jawan Williams is 6'4", and then that smaller, quick man-to-man guy. Like, that could be a lethal combination down the road. Or they end up seeing him as a safety and the Patrick Chung replacement. Either way, I think he will eventually turn into a good player here. I just don't expect much from him as a rookie. You have Keon Croissant. He's more of a special teamer, but he is an absolute freak. I wouldn't say it's impossible for him to develop as a corner. They have Jonathan Jones. He can play. They go get Ken Webster. I think he was a 7th-round pick here. He's, I think, going to compete for that special teams role with Keon Croissant. The cornerback room is amazing here. And then they have safety talent as well. Devin McCourty, still at his age, playing as a top 10 free safety in the NFL. They still have Daron Harmon here. Pretty surprised he hasn't been looked at by the rest of the NFL as a guy that could come in and be a starting caliber free safety for someone, but he offers great depth. And then considering Patrick Chung is more of a linebacker than a rangy safety at this point in his career, they do play, when they do go too high on like 3rd and longs, they'll go with Daron Harmon and Devin McCourty out there, and then they'll move Patrick Chung closer to the line of scrimmage. So you got 3 good safeties there. Obi Melifonwu's on this roster. He can't play football. Maybe he makes the team. They take Malik Gant. I could be wrong here, but I think he was a wide receiver at Marshall. Trying to think back to my draft board, so that's an interesting project. And then they pick up Terrence Brooks from the New York Jets. Another great pickup here. He can totally play at a starting caliber level, has the size to play free safety or strong safety. So just loaded. All three levels of the defense have just crazy depth and talent with the best coaching in the NFL. This defense is going to be awesome. I think this defense could be better than last year if they can get that pass rush from guys like Michael Bennett, Chase Winovich, maybe Derek Rivers emerges, Dietrich Wise, Jamie Collins. Like, if they can recreate those pressures they got from Trey Flowers, they've got the pieces here to be even better than they did last year. So 3rd offense and the 3rd defense, to no surprise, the number 1 coach and culture ranking here with that 99 rating for the defensive coach and culture. This Patriots team has evolved many times in the Tom Brady era. There was times where it was an explosive passing offense, times where it was a little more balanced between all aspects of the game. To me right now, this is more of an old school team. They're going to run the ball. They're going to punch you in the mouth. And it's almost like while the rest of the NFL is going small, the Patriots have gone big and old school. And I honestly kind of love it. We'll see if it all works out and they can get another Super Bowl ring for these guys. So let's take a look at the schedule. Really a joke again. Honestly, I've gone through every schedule in the league now. This might be the easiest schedule in the NFL. Not just the division they have, but we talk a lot about whether a schedule is easy or hard really depends on who in your non-division games do you have to go on the road. And you want to get the worst teams on the road and the better teams at home. So they get Pittsburgh at home, they get the Giants. So while they do have to go to Houston and go to Philadelphia, they also get Kansas City at home, they get Pittsburgh at home, and they get the Cleveland Browns at home, and Dallas at home. So 4 of their 6 difficult games outside of their division, which is already a joke, are at home. So they're going to start with Pittsburgh. I think that's the Sunday night opener. That'll be a great game. Pittsburgh is a sleeper team for me. I don't expect that to come easy, especially because the Patriots are worse in September and do get better as the year goes on. That's also a very good defensive line. They might struggle to run the ball a little more, but I still think they'll win the game. Tom Brady should be able to pick apart that secondary. Then you are at Miami. I did give them that win, but they've struggled with Miami in the past. In Miami, it's early in the season again, and then I have them losing to the Jets at home. This is kind of one of my hot takes here. And then at Buffalo, I have them losing. But then after that, I think we get the typical, oh no, the Patriots are 2-2. Are they going to lose the division? They've now lost to the Jets and the Bills. And then they're going to rattle off and win, 11 of their next 12? I do have them losing at Philadelphia. At Houston is a question mark. That's a good football team. But other than that, they got the Chiefs at home. They got Dallas at home. They should be just fine. I've got them winning 13 games. Vegas has them with 11 wins. It's the highest over-under, and their over is only minus 140. So they're saying it's very likely that they go over, and I actually agree. So I've got them 13-3. Worst case scenario, they get a couple bad breaks and go 10-15, which should still win the AFC East. So we have one more deep dive to go. After that, I will be doing my official preseason predictions, including my playoff and Super Bowl picks. So again, make sure you subscribe for that. I've just started my top 100 for next season as well in terms of the players. So lots of good content coming out. Really excited for this season to get underway. Once these deep dives are done, my podcast is going to resume as well. The Fully Inflated Football Podcast with That Franchise Guy. So lots of good stuff coming. Very excited for it. Please do hit that like button. Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.